finding it difficult that God would actually operate like this?
I'm finding it difficult to refute that argument because it's based on something that I can't wrap my head around to get me.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you can wrap your head around it or not. God will actually use that towards you. That's one of the things that God will actually use.
Actually, Dave actually knows his
As a
statistics
principle.
upon more. How much, when you give to a church, how much money does actually go to charity?
It's virtually impossible to say because churches and all other nonprofits in the United States are not wired to report that they're spending. Some choose to do that for transparency reasons, but it's almost impossible to say. It's estimated, and I'm sorry I don't remember the source for this, that about 3% of the money on average that churches take in go to what the IRS would consider legitimately charitable reasons that don't count churches. Things like actually feeding homeless people, literacy classes and stuff like that.
Well, you know what a Christian calls good? Giving money to other Christians that can go out and tell atheists.
Yeah, why is that good? It seems extremely self-serving.
Oh,
just circular.
But that's exactly what God calls good. God thinks that's
No,
good.
that's what you think you interpret your Bible about.
That's right.
God says.
I and other Christians
that's-
understand that that's exactly what God calls
That's not what God says. That's what the Bible says and how you're interpreting it.
Oh, we expect on the day of judgment that God will say,
I don't really care what you expect. Why should you believe this? Why do you believe? Why do you believe the Bible?
You know what I would say? That your problem with convincing isn't an intellectual one. I would go with John chapter 7.
Let me guess. It's because I like saying so much.
And you would probably be, for the start, with it. If you are willing to walk in the light you already have, God will give you more light.
What makes you think I haven't tried to do that already?
That I don't know, but I do know God. That if you were walking that light, you
believe
would.
that you know God. You're not equivalent statements. This is a belief that you have. You keep stating things
Yes, but I
like it's a
can't,
fact.
because the only thing that I can base anything on is your statements. And I haven't really gotten a lot from you on that.
Okay, but I'm not trying
now
to
that we're here,
making a positive case.
now that we're here, I want to go back to this Passover thing.
Yeah, let me make
Because
sure
the
I got this
Passover thing is in essence over the dynamic range of the word. How big or what did they mean when they're using the word Passover, especially in the first century? Now it's quite clear that Jesus had his disciples prepare the Passover meal.
It's quite clear that they had a last meal together, according to the
List of
myth.
fossil quotations that you gave me.
Call it what you may.
Well, if we're
Still
talking about
references a
terms,
Passover.
if we're talking, it's not necessarily Passover. The argument here is that the one says explicitly that it's Passover, and the others do not. And this is important because this would be like saying, was this just a family dinner like on December 23rd, or was this Christmas dinner on December 24th?
You know, some people have a tendency to celebrate their birthdays on multiple days, and even Christmas likewise. The church has that.
In the first century, there was one official day where this happened, unless you have evidence otherwise.
No, I'm telling you that what I have heard is that they tend to use it rather more loosely than saying. And even this, and I'm looking for his Passover. Let me find it.
I can look at
Okay. This is one place. Now, on the first day, the disciples came up to me, where do you want us to prepare for me to eat the Passover? And they said, go to the city. And so this is called the last Passover with Jesus.
Right, and this is even the night before.
And they're calling it the Passover.
Exactly. So this is the day of the preparation Passover in Judaism, because you cannot do any cooking or work once sunset starts. The day before, which is actually up until sunset, is called the day of the
Most people have taken this, and they take it in the following day.
So the Passover dinner,
that
according
because he
to
was going to be the Passover lamb, this being the reference, they're saying they're using it loosely. But even in the Old Testament, you know that some of the Passovers were celebrated on multiple days.
Well, they were celebrated on different days. There wasn't one unified calendar back then. they were celebrated on different days depending on where you lived. But if you lived in Jerusalem, there was one day that they did it at the temple, that they had the service for.
Yeah, I want to tell you this, but the disciples, and the reason they called this the Passover meal is because Jesus wanted to do a meal with Jews, and they called it the Passover meal.
So you're saying that what's written in there is wrong, and that your interpretation is right? So
You want to impinge upon their textual use of the word
and you're
in
saying
a different meaning.
You're saying you know better than what's written in
And
there?
all I'm telling you is I can't even fathom it and grasp it as a concept.
So you're saying I can't
because
understand it, therefore it's wrong.
It doesn't make sense to say that because they could easily call it Passover.
So you're saying even though they called it this, that's not true. Okay. When they are gathering together and getting the meal together, that is by definition, it's called in Judaism the day of the preparation of Passover. It's the daytime before sunset, because once sunset starts, now you're in Passover. You can't do work anymore.
Yeah, so it would go, technically, yeah, we would argue that. Theologians are even disputing over the day that
That's
Jesus
what
was
I
crucified.
was
In other words,
talking
is
about.
it Thursday or Friday?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, and that's the whole point. If you guys can't even agree, why should we trust you on anything? If you can't even tell me what day this happened, why should I believe the Bible?
The dispute here is over your interpretation of the word
You
Passover.
just told me.
No.
You just told me
The
theologians. You
is
just said
over
theologians can't
yours.
agree. You just told me, not me. You just told me that theologians cannot agree on what day. Yeah.
Handstand on this one, then, if you will.
Why are you out here?
Handstand on this. Does it really matter today when the event is agreed upon?
Yes, because if we can't understand even such a simple detail, then we should question whether we should believe anything in that. This would be like if you're reading, say, a case
Because your
report.
case is basically this. Matthew calls it a Passover meal, and you're going to have a problem because Matthew's calling it a Passover meal, and the next day is
The reason that matters is it totally throws under the train the possibility of the historical accuracy of his trial and crucifixion. The Jewish priests would absolutely never, ever have a trial and a crucifixion
they consider
on the
Jesus
most
a
holy
blasphemer
day of
anyway.
the year. But it's not about Jesus. Though.
But he's the one who
But
asked.
they're the ones who went to the governor and said, we have to have a trial right now in the middle of the night about this.
Let me ask you this. If you're really seriously banking on this, that I refuse to believe God in the Bible for this reason,
No, I'm not refusing to believe God in the Bible. I'm saying this throws into serious question the accuracy of the
are
Bible.
you thinking that you can actually stand on an argument like this in front of God and define Him and hold your life this way with an argument like this?
If I die and your God happens to be the one
If
true
you
God
die
as
and
opposed
you
to the
stand in
10,000
front of God and your excuse is, I couldn't believe the Bible because
there was a
Passover
major
was used
error
one
in
way
it.
in Matthew, and it turns out in the
You
book of
avoided
John,
his
the
question.
You're not
His
even answering what I'm
That's
saying.
wrong.
If there's such an important detail that's wrong,
I'll answer the
why should we
question.
trust it?
I can't even see this as an error.
Let me
And he is saying
explain
it's
this to you.
error.
Okay, let's put it this way. Say that you have a court
No, it
case.
isn't.
Let me explain this. Say you have a court case, and it's about a murder case. Okay, and we're looking at the coroner's report, and the family of this guy is Asian, and they say our son was Asian and he was murdered, and the coroner's report says this guy is Caucasian. Then we would say maybe we should take a second look at this coroner's report. There's clearly major problems with it. I mean, if we can't even understand that, then why should we believe anything else in it?
You have never been in court, have you?
Personally, I mean, you can look it up if you want.
No. You've never been in court and you've been a jury member.
No.
If you ever do get to be a jury member, and unfortunately I was on a meeting.
I should mention that the Bible would never be allowed as evidence under our system.
Okay. Just hear me out on saying that if you were actually asked to be a jury member, this type of reasoning that you're applying would be very hard for you to reach any type of consensus from witnesses that are given.
Yeah, it would. I think eyewitness evidence is the worst kind of evidence because human
Statements
memories
and other
are
stuff from me.
human memories are incredibly fallible. Incredibly. It is virtually impossible, if not impossible, to convict somebody on eyewitness evidence alone. If we had a murder case today and we had like 4 eyewitnesses, but no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA, no video evidence from, an ATM
Yeah, what
across
we
the
say is
street,
no
it
physical
never,
material
ever
evidence.
happened. I'm not saying that there's no...
Well, except the body. What said there was a murder?
Well, I'm just saying. I said
If
if
there's
we
a
had,
body, then you have a hard time
I'm not
defining
talking about the same
Habeas
hypothetical
corpus,
case.
bring the body.
I'm saying if we don't have anything but people saying it happened, that's not good enough for excellent reasons.
Okay. I still have a problem grasping why you insist that this should be a grounds for an error.
Because of the 4th commandment. Because Jewish priests would never violate the 4th commandment. They would wait a day. They wouldn't have done this.
In the Old Testament, they went ahead and separated the Passover again on the next day.
What do you mean?
And Habakkuk, they did it again. They did it twice.
Okay.
So they don't seem to have a problem with this.
That does, but okay, if you extend the Passover, you're just making the problem worse. You're saying that now on 2 days they're not going to do
they did
it.
it twice.
If you're
If they did the Passover twice under Hezekiah, I just don't see your statement.
The point
it doesn't
is,
work in the Old Testament, and I don't see why they have a problem.
if you're arguing that the Passover was longer, then you're making the problem worse for yourself. You're saying that now on 2 days they wouldn't do anything.
I'm saying to you, and it's been often said concerning the statement in Matthew, particularly of the Passover, that Jesus said, let's have a Passover meal, even though it wasn't quite the time of the Passover. That's usually the way it's understood. So
even though it doesn't,
whether it's Thursday or
does it say that in there? Where are you getting it?
that's the way that they have usually said
Who's
that
they?
Jesus took it and used the word loosely.
Who is they?
The way we understand it.
Who's we? What do you mean we? It doesn't say
who has
that in
read
there.
it, and we don't see
Okay,
it as
so
a
this is an interpretation. So basically what you're saying is, it says one thing, it doesn't make sense, it's wrong, therefore we are going to put a better story on top of it to make it not wrong. That's what you just told me. You just said, it says the Passover even though it wasn't. That would show that this is a contradiction and incorrect. But I don't want to accept
that you would have something stronger than, something as dubious as the days when there is plenty of evidence that no one's had any issue with this. Neither did the Jews, or why isn't even mentioned by the Jewish
This is
religion.
one example. There are lots of reasons that this is an implausible account.
I know that Judaism, the non-ones that reject Jesus as the Messiah, have criticisms against the New Testament. But they don't come up with this one.
I don't agree with that. I know several Jews. I was raised Jewish that find this a major problem of the New Testament. Myself included. What do you want to say about that?
Then I would suggest you go back to the Old Testament and find the 2 days they celebrated the Passover and get over it.
That doubles the problem.
No,
if
it doesn't double the
you're
problem
saying
for
that the
God.
Passover is 2 days,
Why
then
should we
now
live?
what?
What's the point for living?
I don't
Why
know.
should I keep on living?
I have no idea. I hope that you.
What's the
do.
point that we should all commit suicide?
Well,
Let me ask you that.
That's Sark
I'm
who
not
asked that
nihilist.
question. Why not die?
Yeah, why not die?
He asked that question.
I don't have a surefire answer.
Exactly, you don't have an answer to that.
And what's your point?
What is the point?
I don't know. I'm not saying that I
Do we
have.
want
a
to live
better
like
answer.
that? Let me ask you that.
I
Would you live
think,
like that?
Well,
Do these people want to live like
I
that?
think that you make your own meaning in life. I think you have to find your own meaning, otherwise you are going to commit suicide.
But would you want to live with the fact that you have no meaning?
Well, just because
think that's
nature.
terrible.
Now, there's an important point to a distinction to be drawn there. Just because nature doesn't provide you with a meaning doesn't mean that there is no meaning. That's not necessarily.
Yeah, but if nature doesn't give you reason, then there is no reason.
Nature. That's not true either. Nature does give us reason. That's
No, it
what
doesn't.
brains are. What are you saying?
You can't just naturally find reason. I mean, like if you're just spontaneously made, there is no reason.
Yeah, I mean, you're
That's
absolutely right.
that's
And
human
why not?
rationality. What are you
Why
talking
not
about?
just
Exactly.
I'm not saying that. What's the point? What's the point? What's the point of? What's the point that you have to convert everyone to?
Why should I believe?
I mean, what would it matter if people would believe in God or not, or in atheism, or in Hinduism, or in
care about what they did.
I'm not Jewish.
But then there's no excuse.
Well, what would be the point?
What do you mean?
Because you said that you followed it.
I mean, like, if there's no point behind it,
There's a point.
I wasn't.
I mean, like,
Religious people, the point is spreading.
They didn't have a problem with that, with the multiple Passover in the Old Testament. It's Chronicles, 2 Chronicles 30, and if they did it there in 2 Chronicles 30,
what would be?
then what would be the problem of Jesus
If you
bumping it up a bit?
The point is,
I mean, I'm serious. What's the problem? That's why I can't even
what's the
see
point
it as
if
an
that
issue.
happens?
And I'm going to tell you this, that if you honestly think that this is the reason I'm throwing the Bible, and you're going to stand in front of God, and
I'm not going to stand in front of God.
You're going to stand
Are
in
you
front of
worried
God.
about going to the Muslim hell? Do you stay up at night worrying about that?
So I happen to know that God is real, and I know that you'll stand in front of God.
You believe that God is
No,
real.
I have met God, and
You
you will
have
meet
met God?
die.
Explain.
I don't need to explain someone who doesn't want to hear.
I'm asking you if you
I mean,
can.
like, how would that?
You're not interested in
If
light.
I want to know. I'm telling you.
How would
You
that?
don't have to
How
believe
You
it.
haven't proven to me that you want to know much.
I have to prove to you that I want to know before you.
You know
answer.
why? Because
Why do you come out here and preach if you don't want to answer
Why
people's
are those
questions?
social constructions?
this is the question to answer, because you asked to me.
You claim
All right,
that
I'll
you
tell
met
you,
God.
sir, why not? Jesus said, don't throw your pearls before swine.
And then
But
why?
they're always
That's
changing.
a stupid reason.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
1
First
years from
Peter
now, can you say
3:15
what's
says if
right?
somebody asks you for the reason that you believe, then you should give it to them.
That's right. You can quote the Bible.
Yeah.
And I will
So
tell you
what's
that
your
I have
point?
met God.
And I'm asking for the reason that you believe that happened.
1,000 years from
Why
now,
do you think that
would
wasn't
be
your
for certain
imagination?
then? No. Exactly.
My imagination argued with me.
So you're crazy? You're schizophrenic? Is that what you're telling
My
me?
imagination that God was directing my life.
I'm convinced that you can't supply
I
your
knew
real answer.
it was God.
You believed it?
No, I knew.
You believe?
No, I knew.
How do you know? Tell me how you know.
I
And then
lost
won't
the
say
argument with God.
that. So you had an argument in your head, and you lost, and you're saying that somehow means that it was God and not.
You know the reason why I don't want to share it?
Is that
Because if
then
anyone
is
wants
life
to go
worth-
to
then
the
is that
depths
kind
of
of life
so
worth living?
facetiously arguing over the meaning of the word Passover, in spite of biblical evidence, I don't see
It's not
fit.
biblical evidence.
I
You
don't
told
see
me. You
fit
told me it wasn't the
to
Bible. You said it was the church
explain.
that
I have
said
told
that.
many people outside how I met God, but I don't see fit. Why should I tell you?
If you don't think that
Because
it's
I
worth
don't
trying,
think
why do you want to listen? So basically, you think you can't convince me because I'm not as gullible as other
No,
people.
it's not that you're gullible.
I
It's
know
that
that.
you
That's
are
my
more
point.
argumentative and less willing to hear.
So basically, if I appeared to you to be more gullible, then you would tell me.
No, it's exactly what I said, that you are more argumentative and less willing to hear.
Tell me. I will listen. I won't say anything. I won't interrupt you. I just.
But you have a tendency to really do that.
I will stop. Tell me why you believe that it was actually God and not your imagination, and why you think that this is knowledge and not simply a belief that you have.
All right. It is true that you will have a problem with, and you're confusing the notion of whether a thought is generated within the head or an experience is had. And I will grant you that there are numerous Christians, and I am not one, who have actual experiences from time to time with God. This is an actual thing that we do say occurs. We do not attribute these things to emotions, feelings of emotion. One among other things that we say is because God gives directions to His servants. Jesus said, "My sheep shall hear my voice." So one of the things that we do say that Christians do is they are aware that God speaks. Notice that Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice." And so it is something that God does speak to His people. the time I got into trouble with God was when I was on the birth of campus and the Gideons were handing out Bibles. And I saw this. And so I'm now going to tell you, and the reason I didn't want to tell you early because you really want
identical twins when they're set if they're
so if
separated.
you don't want to argue, I'll tell the story.
I'm listening.
And if you listen, I will tell it.
Like say one's
And I will tell you, I went and I saw the Gideons handing out Bibles, and I said in my head, save it for the sinners.
chance at the other, even
And that's what I said. And I walked right between the Gideons handing out Bibles, and I didn't get very far when God spoke my name in my head and said, Gunnar, pick it up. And it really caught me, and it caught me quite strangely. And then I said, I have a Bible at home. And then this thing came back in my head and says, you don't read it. And then I said, I will get a Bible. And this voice says, no, you won't. And I stopped, and I thought about it, and I said, no, I won't. I haven't in the past, and therefore I won't do it again. And then I walked on. And I remember looking up and saying, this is not my conscience. And I went to where I was heading, which was the chemistry library, by the way. And in doing that, I crossed over near a creek, which was a creek on the campus. And there's a bench, and on the bench, someone left a Bible. The Gideons had picked up. And when I saw that Bible, the voice spoke to me again. It said, Gunnar, pick it up. And I looked at it, and I went back and forth and decided, was it going to pick it up, was it not? And it was very odd, because the voice comes with force. And I'm kidding you not, it was external to me, but in my head. And it has force. Because we haven't explained it yet. And it went on, and I saw another Bible, and the same voice, Gunnar, pick it up. And each time this went, I went on, and I refused to pick it up. I went past probably 5 minutes, the way I figured. I got very disturbed by the time I hit the chemistry room. My goal was to pick up a reading assignment was a journal. And I picked it up, and I decided I wasn't going to sit at the nearest desk. So I walked up, and I thought, the farthest one's in the sun. I'll sit in the sun. So I walked down to the farthest covered desk, and on the desk is a Bible. I agree with you. Another one. This time, I don't hear Gunnar pick it up. I hear, this is your last chance. And with it comes the following concept. I have been trying to speak to you all day, and you haven't been listening to me. This is your last chance for eternity. You will either listen to me or you will go to hell. Basically, is what I got. With the statement came down, and I looked at that and I thought, well, I have been arguing with someone I don't even know, and that's the truth. I didn't even know who this was, and I was wondering what was going on inside my head. So I picked up the Bible and I read the first verse, and it's John 3:16. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. It doesn't read like that at all. It reads like this to me: For God so loved Gunnar, the sinner, that He gave His only Son. That if Gunnar would believe in Him, he would have eternal life. And with that, hit me, the power of God. And I broke down and cried. You may call that emotion, but it was power that hit inside my soul. And with that, I realized, whoa, God wants me to read the Bible. Up to that point, I, as a college student, had not read the Bible. I had gone to church because my parents had brought me there, but I had never read the Bible. So I picked up this Bible and I read it. Now, I had a Bible at home. And the reason I didn't read it was because the English language Bible, it was a Good News Bible, was way too simple, and I basically didn't like it. I really didn't like it, and God knew it. And what I needed was another Bible. And so I picked up that Bible and I began to read it. And as I read it, I started to see things that I never saw about humanity and about myself. And I started to realize this, that Jesus, when I was a college student, was a real good teacher. That was one of the first things that I realized about that. And it took me later, about a year later, when I bent my knee to God and said, come into my life. And when I did that, He literally came in, and there's a reality about God that steps in.
Could you fix it if we're not?
You want me to fix it?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So here then is my answer. Notice that on the first day that I claimed that I had a real encounter with God, I made a statement within myself, save it for the sinners. And I am certain to this day that what happened was God heard me say that in my head. That God actually hears things inside me. Because I didn't say this out loud, I said it quietly to myself. You know how people can say things in their head? Sure. Silently. I said it to myself silently, walked past silently and successfully, didn't want one, was going to intend to live my own life as I have lived my own life. And I got intercepted. I got intercepted with a God who wanted me to hear Gunnar, the sinner. Did you get that? When I read John 3:16, God deliberately changed that around so that I would be included in the list of sinners. I was not including myself in the list of sinners. And that, in God's eyes, I'm going to tell you, is I might as well just stick a finger in his eye or something like that, because that ticks God's off. And this is what's wrong with most of humanity, is to say they're good. And to start with God is you start to say, I am a sinner. It goes an awful long way with God. And God wanted me to at least realize that, and so that's the start. And he had to use a verse that I would tell you, I had heard in the liberal church that I had gone to so many times that I should have been dull of hearing to the extent of absolutely blinded to it completely, and yet it was not so. That something that shouldn't have moved me an iota didn't just move me. It wasn't from within myself. It was a power from without me. Hits me, and that's the proper term to say that. Literally hits me.
Literally, like slapped you
Inside the soul, when the power of God, no, with God, who is a spirit, when it comes inside of you, you will say that it's a literal hit inside your spirit, not a physical hit, but a literal hit anyway. It is not within the mind. It is not within the mind. And these thoughts that I had, I want you to ponder this. And this is what I ponder. The thoughts I had, I was arguing with something that knew me better than myself, that only upon recognition that I had to backtrack and second thought that the thing was right. I wouldn't have gone out and gotten a Bible. I wouldn't have even turned around and picked one up. But to tell you the truth, I was too pride-filled to do that, and I was even too pride-filled to pick one up on a lonely bench in the middle of a forest grove where no one would have seen me. I was stubborn, and that would be the proper word, and I had to recognize that, and I finally said the last time that I was being immensely stubborn, and I made the decision there is, what's this going to cost me if I actually read it? Little did I know what it would cost me. Because an honest reading of the Bible can lead you right to God, because the Bible does say this concerning it. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Up to this point, I hadn't given the Bible an honest reading. I hadn't read it. I hadn't looked at it. I had had it read to me. I had heard it. God was holding me guilty for what I had heard, and he made that very clear to me. God rebuked me quite strongly on the day that I would call my conversion. He rebuked me. He had nothing good to say to me on the day of my conversion. On the day of my conversion, he called me the fool who built his house on the sand. That's what God did. His reference to me when I met my knee in front of God was, "You're a fool who built your house on the sand." You would think he would have said, "Now welcome home, child." It was not what he said. What he said to me, and remember what I'm saying, the Christian hears the voice of God. What he said to me was found on the end of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, "The wise man hears the word of God and follows it, and the foolish man hears the word of God and doesn't do it." And God was calling me. Because up to that point, when I was 20 years old, I had heard the word of God and felt it in my life. I refused to, because I wanted my own life. And that was my real motive. I was playing selfish, having my own way. You couldn't accuse me of drinking because I didn't drink. You couldn't accuse me of sexual immorality in that sense that most people would do. Although I fornicated, in a sense, masturbated. I was in trouble in that way, but in otherwise I didn't mess around with girls. So you would have said I was pure or righteous in that way, but not righteous in this. And God knew who I was, and he nailed me. And this is what I mean when I say that I had a collision with God. I hadn't planned on it, I didn't pass it. It wasn't part of my life, it wasn't part of my plan. Here was my plan. My plan was as a chemist. Go get my degree, finish it off. When this happened to me, I was a junior. My plan was that I became a Christian in my senior year. My plan was to go get a degree, achieve as much as I could, settle down, get a family, get a wife, and have a life. That was my plan. And my plan never included God. In fact, I had been part of the church it was part of. I've been thinking of leaving it. I was pretty tired of what I saw in it, and I was going to leave it. And I realized afterward what was wrong. It was probably more me than even the church. But I knew the church was wrong, and the church group that I was in was pretty wrong. And I will even say among the group that I was in, the pastor was okay, but a large number of people in the very church that I was in were like I was, hypocrites on the church group. And I'm not wrong to say that. And defining who is a hypocrite is someone who says, because up to that point I would have told people, yeah, sure, I was a Christian. That's right, I wasn't a Christian at all. I didn't want God in my life. I didn't want to follow Him. When earlier in life I had sensed the draw of God to call and follow Him, I had said no to God earlier in my life, and it took this collision of God, me, and the Bible, and several things that happened in the year thereafter, which I will not define to you what they were, but I had several other collisions with the being with whom I didn't want to deal with. But that was a pretty strong but I had collisions with him. And it was those collisions that caused me to turn around and sober me up as my brother told me, it didn't matter because my brother died at age 19. He said it didn't matter whether I lived to be 90 or 19, we'll meet God. That's what my other brother told me. And that was one of the statements that really sobered me up. Life is finite. In that, and that was, you would say, not something that convinced me, but caused me to ponder and think. But it was this, the Bible, and I'm going to have to tell you several other events that God was using simultaneously that really nailed my hide and caused me to finally bend my knee in front of a TV set when I was too sick to go to church on a Sunday morning and say, God, I want you to come in my life. And it was doing that finally caused God to break through into my life. But it took this. I had to get rid of my stubbornness. I had to be willing to follow God. And God wasn't willing to deal with me on my terms. I had to deal with Him on His terms. And up to that point, He had a collision with me. And I believe what triggered most of this was the fact that the very day that I sat there, saw the Gideons and said, save it for the sinner. And God said, dude, you're either one way or the other today. You've made up your mind, either one way or the other. And that's what He wanted out of me that day. He wanted a decision out of me that day. What was I going to do with Him and His Word? And all He wanted me that day was to pick up the Bible and read. That was the only decision He wanted me to do. He didn't want anything more out of me than that. It happened to be the beginning of Lent 1983, if you want to know. So it was Ash Wednesday 1983, if you want to know the date. But on Ash Wednesday 1983, God had one thing for me to do. He wanted me to open it up and see what it says. And that's what I agreed to do when the Bible was sitting on the top. I agreed to open it up, to look inside, and to give it an honest read. And I did do that. And I'm going to tell you this, it struck me as a supernatural book. I'm going to tell you this, that the pastor saying things to me, my confirmation, my baptism when I was an infant, had no meaning to me. They did not impact me. In fact, my heart was getting harder and I was heading off in the wrong direction.
Can I respond? I didn't.
Yeah, and now I am finished. You can respond.
I didn't know when.
Yeah, I'm through.
So basically, I don't want to tear down the straw man. So correct me if I'm misrepresenting somebody. You heard a voice in your head that you believe was God. I am not questioning your certainty on that point, but I am saying that people can be certain about things and also be incorrect about those things. Certainty and relation to what's true and objective reality are not necessarily linked. We would agree with that? I mean, there are Hindus and Muslims and Jews who are just as certain that they are correct.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Muhammad, who claimed revelation, didn't ask his wife whether what he was receiving.
I'm not arguing in favor of Islam. I'm saying that you can be certain about something and be wrong about it. Do you agree with that?
There's always a possibility that you can be wrong.
Okay, so you're technically an agnostic, I mean, on that regard, right? I mean, agnostic meaning that you don't claim 100% certainty about your beliefs. That's the definition of agnostic. You're not 100% certain.
I will argue against your position in the following way.
Okay.
I literally have still a copy of the Bible.
Okay.
I literally read that Bible. Something literally happened to me.
Are you 100% certain? Okay, then you're not. Then what you said a minute ago could be wrong.
You gave me an abstract statement. and I agreed with your abstract statement.
The definition.
You asked me whether I was 100% certain of my story. I am 100% certain of my story.
Well, so you're saying you're 100% certain that was God talking to you. How do you know that?
I will put it this way. When God speaks, man knows.
Okay, that's
Right? So that's going to be my first claim. That when God speaks...
What is your basis for saying that? I mean, this is just circular. You're saying, I know it's God because God said so. And he said that it was
If you heard me the way I told the story,
I was
you would have
listening the whole
listened
time.
to the following.
Yeah,
that
I understand.
I was
that
aware of
it was a
argument
voice that you
somewhat.
perceived to not be yours. I understand that you felt that. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying that you were incorrect.
Okay. Who else knows me better than me?
It's still your head that produces this voice. As far as we can show, as far as we know, as far as you know. You don't know that it was anything else. You believe that it was something else. I'm not saying it wasn't something else, but I'm saying that's a pretty unlikely claim. And it's more likely that, and like you said, you started crying afterwards.
The power of God hit me.
You believe this is
I don't know
God.
your name. What's your name?
Dave.
Dave. My name is Gunnar. So Dave? I might even have the audacity, Dave, to pray that a day would be coming that the power of God would hit you.
And I'm going to turn around 3 times in a circle and chop the head off a chicken that Thor will rescue you if it makes you feel better. It's a ridiculous ritual. You can do it if it makes you feel better.
It's not something that would make me feel better, but you see, Dave, what you are objecting to is, if I were a scientist, and I'll take this as a scientist, if I were a scientist and had a discovery in a lab, does anyone else to say if I say, this is what I saw in the lab?
I believe you.
Okay,
You said you saw
you
it,
would
and
say
you
that I saw
perceived
it,
that to be what
and
happened.
if I were in the field of psychiatry, and I said, aha, with this came this, even though others have not perceived that, for them to just say it is not and it's just constructed.
I didn't say it was constructed. I said it's possible that this is your imagination. And
I am
because it's
telling
possible,
you that
then you're
you
not.
asked me about the certainty, and I am going to tell you on this area, I am 100% certain that it was God. I will be less certain, now listen to this statement.
Okay.
There are times, and I will let you know, that I believe that God leads by feelings and intuitions.
So,
now listen to me, carefully listen, that he is less clear deliberately and more quiet deliberately to see whether the person is really willing to respond. And God deliberately does this to even his children.
Why do you think that?
Oh.
Where did that come from? Is that in the Bible?
There are teachings of this in the Bible.
Where?
Oh, I don't know whether I should show much of the Bible to you, seeing that you want to dispute it.
Well, okay, then don't bring it up. I mean,
Okay.
you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want to bring the Bible into this, then give it to me, or don't.
The still small voice of God to the prophet. The leading of the Spirit is one of the references. And so there are allusions to what the Spirit of God does in a person's life. On occasion, people don't hear, in a sense, words.
And why should I believe that book?
Well, you see, that's the reason why I don't want to share the book with you, because you come at
Well,
it
if you're going to bring it into it as a
as a
source,
skeptic.
well, if I had a book and I said, Harry Potter exists,
why?
and I can prove this to you because it's here in this Harry Potter book, you would say, why should I believe that book? What basis do I have for trying to claim that this represents reality? It's the same.
I believe I told you this before. Are you saying John chapter 7 teaches this concerning the Bible and the words of Jesus?
If you want to bring the Bible in, that's fine. We can use that as a source of God's teaching. But first, You need to show me why I should trust that as a source of God's teaching, as opposed to just a man-made creation, like I would imagine you think the Quran is or any other one.
All right. I'm going to just take you to a passage, and I'm going to give you a really facetious answer.
This to prove this.
No, I'm going to give you a facetious answer.
This is the claim.
No, I'm going to tell you what God's going to do to you.
This is the claim. This isn't the proof.
No,
I'm
I'm
asking
telling
for
you.
why I should believe.
You're going about
what
this
that
the wrong
says.
way. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Why should I believe what that says? Any more than if I said, if you don't believe that Harry Potter's real, the Dementors will come and get you. And I'm going to turn to page 768. There you go. See? It doesn't work like that. You have to actually show me why this book matters.
Yeah, I'm not talking about HP.
I don't care what it says until you can show me why I should believe it. Not what, why. I mean, tell me why, and then I'll be happy to listen.
All right.
I'm very interested in what the Bible
All right, I'll
says.
give you an
It seems to be very
objective
accurate.
reasoning for why.
Okay.
Why comes with the notion of inspiration. So I'll be honest with you in this. But I'm going to go back to John chapter 7.
This is just circular again.
No, it's not, and I will go back and tell you why. So bear me out on this one.
Okay.
In John chapter 7, Jesus said, "You shall know my words are not mine. I didn't make them up. If you are willing to do them." In other words, what you are willing to walk in morally as your life will determine how much God is going to give to you in terms of the skepticism that you are now doing.
So if I just believe Christianity, then I will believe
No,
Christianity?
it relates to the degree and the morality inside a person's life. There's going to be, the more immoral one lives, the more likely you're going to have skepticism.
And how do I know what moral living is? And
Oh, sir, I will ask you the question. Do what you think is good
That's what Confucius
and
said.
pursue it. And that will be the start of it.
what makes you think I don't do that now?
Because
think that that's not what
I will
everyone-
have God convict you whenever he finds out that you're falling short of that standard. Because I believe that
don't
people
doubt that you
actually do
believe
fall short of the standard of following good. I don't think they pursue it. They pursue selfishness.
I'm not sure that.
The biblical description of mankind is to pursue self.
Well, I mean,
Not-
why should we care what the biblical description is? You keep bringing up the Bible, but you're using the Bible to do it. That's a
See, that's
circular.
why I don't want to use the Bible in front of you.
Then don't use the Bible.
That's exactly why I'm not going to answer you a question from the Bible. Don't you see? That's why I'm doing that. That's why I didn't want to tell you why, and I didn't want to drive into things.
I'm not insisting that you use the Bible. I'm saying if
because
you want to use it.
it is not, in fact, a healthy form of skepticism that you are showing. Healthy skepticism can be, I don't believe it,
Theist
but
is telling the skeptic how to do skepticism. I'm
no,
not telling
because
you
there's
how
a
to be Christian.
skepticism of your type that's an unhealthy skepticism.
Unhealthy
and
because
how
you're proving
you
you're
profess
trying to
to be an
say
expert on skepticism, on what's healthy versus unhealthy skepticism.
Because
better than
first
an
of all,
actual skeptic.
I know that you are not skeptic over all of life.
How do you know that? You just met me. You don't know. Maybe I am a global skeptic.
Well, then I'll ask you the question. Are you a global skeptic?
Yes, I am.
You're skeptical about everything?
I am skeptical about everything with the one exception that I exist. If I don't
Okay,
exist,
are
I
you
can't-
uncertain about everything?
I am uncertain about everything except my own existence.
Are you uncertain about your uncertainty?
exactly.
Yes.
So if you're uncertain about your uncertainty, does that make you certain? So if you're skeptical about your
I am-
skepticism, are you not skeptical?
I just said I'm a global
Then
skeptic
what
with
are
the
you?
exception of my own existence. I
So
thought
the
I was
only
pretty
thing
clear
you
about
know is that you exist.
That's correct.
So I don't even exist.
I don't know that you don't. I believe that you do, but I admit that that's.
So if I
It's
disappear,
possible. That
more
this is
likely
a
that
dream.
you
well then
exist
I
and not
you're
exist.
not
then
really here having
in
this
your
conversation.
dream, I tell you and announce to you the reality of Jesus Christ and of God and of your judgment.
And I don't believe it. I mean, you can announce it. I mean, he could announce that Harry Potter is real. I don't have any better reason.
I don't have any other problem. If you want to be the skeptical and try to defend the skepticism in front of God, I think it would be a rather amusing conversation.
I would be happy to do it. I think it would be amusing too.
Let it be
Yeah,
known
it would be fun to put
that
on my
let
blog.
man, it's said that let man be shown a liar and God true in this day. In this day, when that happens, all man will be shown a liar and God true. So you will have your day in which you will be having to convince God. No,
I mean, according to whom? According to you?
all I'm saying
According
is
to
that-
your book that you can't use anymore because you said I
No,
don't have a
because
good reason for
I don't
why
use a book where one decide. I put it away. Did you notice that?
I did notice that.
I put the book away because you are saying you don't want to use it, so I put it away.
I'm happy to use it if and only if you can first show me why we should use it. Which you
So having
apparently
put it
can't
away,
do.
let me talk about this. Is it possible? Is it possible, if Christianity is the one that's wrong, is it possible that there's a God somewhere who has inspired some writing somewhere?
Of course that's possible. I think it's incredibly implausible.
But you're a skeptic. You almost are a universal skeptic. So you should have disagreed with my statement.
That it's possible?
Yes.
A skeptic believes that anything is possible. It doesn't mean that they believe it.
Okay,
It means
but
they're
would you then
skeptical about it.
grant, in a more healthy sense, the possibility that there is a God and the possibility that God has spoken?
Yes, I
In
grant
other
the
words, the
possibility.
possibility of inspiration of religious texts.
I believe it's a possibility. I think it's absurdly small probability wise. But I think it's possible that suddenly gravity could completely reverse and that car could just fall that way instead of this way.
Right.
It's possible.
Absurdly
And, I
small.
mean, it doesn't mean that I believe it could happen or that it's true.
No, I think that you should give it much more possibility than that. Because first of all, what position are you taking if you're such a skeptic?
Absurdly.
What's your
What
world
makes you
look
think
like?
I have a position?
Well, then I'm going to say you have a nothing. Your position's a nothing. Why is it
that
goose
bad?
egg? What does it matter? Then it's what? Was it your question? I don't remember.
It was somebody else, but-
Someone else. He walked away. Sorry, the person who walked away, who was standing here. Sorry, and he said, well, "What's the meaning then?" So that's why
I
asked
don't
you.
necessarily have an answer to that. I understand that you believe that you have the best answer, but you just
Okay.
have an answer. I mean, there are lots of people who have answers. That doesn't mean you're right.
Can I ask a question about the story that you were telling earlier? About how you were talking
Every religion
about
has
the story
an
of
answer.
conversion.
That doesn't solve the problem.
You said it happened while you were in college.
That's correct.
Where in college?
University. Does it have to be a religion or
And you said that you
does it have to be a religion or just belief in a deity?
a copy of the Bible.
If you can convince me that a deity exists, then I'll change my mind too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you
I don't think
received
that
the
one
Bible
does.
From
Okay.
the Gideon's
No, I received it indirectly.
Okay, do you
because
want to
someone else
step
had
over
picked
here and
one
do
up.
it?
Someone left it there.
Let me start a new file on this so that I can chop this up better.